Tonight on Where's My Liquor, the Silver Arrows are coming off a pretty disappointing results in Singapore. Results that saw George Russell eliminated from the championship, meaning for the second year in a row, we're guaranteed a non-Mercedes driver will win the Drivers' Championship this year. Of course, during the time off heading into Japan, into this week's race, Toto Wolff talked about Lewis Hamilton's future in F1, and saying that Lewis Hamilton has probably 5 more years left in him. So with this news, this more means that Days of Our Mercedes is probably continuing on for 5 more years. Well, so much for a last dance season. Honestly, I do not even think Hamilton will last 5 more years. I think Hamilton's just trying to let our guard down and take a giant shit on us. But of course, throughout this week, there was talks about if Red Bull breached the cost cap or not, and which they did minorly. Of course, Lewis Hamilton talked in brief about how the FIA should throw the rule book at Red Bull for violating it, even if it didn't mean a performance advantage in any way. Hamilton still says the book should be thrown at Red Bull because rules are rules. And of course, Hamilsexuals are still calling to have the championship from last year go back to Lewis Hamilton. Can you all shut the fuck up about Abu Dhabi already, for fuck's sakes? Hamilton had 21 other races to not put himself in that position where the FIA could dictate the outcome of it. He had 21 races to not put himself in that position, and he failed to take advantage of it. Oh my god. And give it up about the title. The championship's never being overturned. Because if they ever overturn the championship, then they would have to go back to Abu Dhabi and redo the entire ceremony all over again, and it would just be a waste of goddamn money and time to do it all over again. That's why you'll never see a NASCAR championship decided by disqualification, because it would just be a waste of money and time to do the entire ceremony all over again. But of course, throughout all of this though, Lewis Hamilton did talk in brief about George Russell, his teammate, saying that there will be a day where Hamilton will no longer be in F1. There will also be a day where Days of Our Mercedes will no longer continue, but that day is not here yet. But Lewis did go on and say that he wants Russell to be the next British champion in F1, and that he wants to be a positive influence with the team. Positive influence? I've heard a lot of reports and rumors that Hamilton's been trying to get Russell fired for outperforming him, and trying to get Valtteri Bottas to come back to Mercedes. Lewis, give it up. Your bitch is no longer coming back. Valtteri wants nothing to do with you. I think Lewis is just upset here and kind of closet and kind of hiding behind his emotions. That George Russell is just a better upgraded version of him. And that Lewis is no longer the top priority at Mercedes. But of course, with all this drama turned, it's now time to focus to the land of the rising sun, the Suzuka Circuit in Japan. Of course, this is the return of the Japanese Grand Prix to the schedule. Of course, the last time we ran this race was 3 years ago, and this track has been very kind to the Silver Arrow faithful, as Hamilton and Mercedes have had great success at this track. Of course, their speed this weekend was pretty non-existent. But for the race this weekend, it would be a full rain race, where they would start on full wets with some on intermediate tires, and they would start the race off well, with Verstappen taking the pole. And of course, Max Verstappen entering with a chance to win the championship. He has to be 112 points ahead of Leclerc to lock up the title. Of course, on lap 1, we would have our first incident, where Carlos Sainz would then spin out and crash, which would force a full safety car. And during this entire time, we'd also have Alex Albon lose an engine, and then Pierre Gasly would pick up a sign, and due to all the spray and shit and the heavy rain everywhere, we would have a scary incident where Pierre Gasly almost collides with a fucking tractor that's trying to get Sainz's car off the track. It's like, why the fuck do we have a tractor still on the track in Japan? Did we literally learn nothing from Jules Bianchi's fatal crash 8 years ago? by God, we've learned nothing from this. And by the way, that fatal crash is the reason why we have the fucking Halo today. But let's be real, now, Pierce said he would have died if he collided with that tractor. But, I don't know, it's really tough to say if that Halo would have saved Pierre or not, if that situation did happen, but yet to be seen. Well, yeah, that's kind of a scary incident, so yeah, that's kind of a thumbs down on Japan. They've learned nothing from Bianchi's fatal crash 8 years ago. We would then go into a massive red flag after 3 laps. And oh, by the way, according to F1 rules, after 2 laps, it's declared an official race. So there's a chance we could have another Belgium 2021 on our hands in Japan. We would wait for a little bit, wait long enough to where we would be forced into a time race. We would eventually get back going with about an hour remaining with an hour left in the race. So after an hour, whatever lap they're on would be the white flag lap and they would get the checkered flag after. Of course, Max Verstappen, he would go on and lead and dominate this race, while the Silver Arrows struggled throughout much of this race, including Hamilton and Russell, as both Silver Arrows struggled on with the wet conditions. But even if Verstappen won, Verstappen would need a little help, because even with a win, that would still not be enough to be far enough ahead of Charles Leclerc. So if Verstappen were to win, he would need Leclerc to finish 3rd or worse to win the championship. And there's even a question of if Verstappen would even have that chance, because if the race doesn't go at least to 50 or 75%, it's a half points race. But in the end, Max Verstappen, he would dominate and he would go on and get his 12th win of the season in Japan. So then Max Verstappen, he gets the win. And when it looked like Leclerc was going to get second, hold on a minute. We have a penalty. Beep. Because Sergio Perez, he would force Leclerc and Ferrari to make a mistake, as Leclerc would cut the final chicane coming to the white flag. And that corner cutting would cost Leclerc to get a 5-second penalty, which would bump Leclerc down to 3rd. Keep in mind, that's going to be pretty important in a few minutes. But for now, let's celebrate Max Verstappen winning this race. So with Verstappen winning this race and Perez finishing 2nd, and Leclerc finishing 3rd, we initially thought that Verstappen would not win the title, and that he was 1 point short, until a Red Bull mechanic pulled up the rulebook and said, no, according to this section of the rulebook, it's a full points race. And they even have Mercedes and Ferrari and other team mechanics and team principals look it over and confirm it. And after further review, during Max Verstappen's interview, we would then find out that Max Verstappen was indeed full points, and that Max Verstappen did just enough to clinch the title. He needed to be 112 points ahead of 2nd to win the championship. He leaves Japan 113 points to the good, which means with 4 races remaining in the season, Max Verstappen has officially locked up his 2nd championship. So Verstappen has successfully defended his championship from last year and goes back to back. You know what? Stop the Supermax song. Let's play the Supermax celebration again. We're gonna do it twice. So with Max Verstappen getting the win, it means that for the 2nd year in a row, Max Verstappen will get to pick out his Metro card and hop aboard the W train. But also, with Red Bull finishing 1-2 and Mercedes still struggling, there is also another caveat since it was full points, because with these results, it means that Mercedes is now officially eliminated from the Constructors' Championship. Meaning for the first time since 2013, we will have a Constructors' Champion in F1 not named Mercedes. Unfortunately for Red Bull, they do not lock up the Constructors' Championship here, but they are in a really good position to lock it up at COTA in 2 weeks. For Red Bull to lock it up at COTA in 2 weeks, they just have to be 147 points ahead of Ferrari, or whoever's second in the Constructors' Championship to lock it up. And they enter COTA 165 points to the good. So as long as they don't lose more than 19 points to Ferrari and COTA, they will lock up the Constructors' title more than likely. But we'll have to see here. But so a disappointing season for the Silver Arrows means that Mercedes' streak of 8 consecutive Constructors' Championships will officially come to an end in 2022. So yeah, for the first time in 8 years and for the first time in the turbo hybrid era, we are guaranteed a new Constructors' Champion. But hey, I mean, 8 in a row, that's still an impressive run for the Silver Arrows. You can't fault them for that. I mean, winning 8 in a row in any championship is very hard to do. Like, the only other time I recalled any sports team winning 8 in a row was the Boston Celtics in the 50s and 60s when they won 8 NBA titles in a row. I mean, that's impressive. Like, I mean, I wouldn't normally say that could be an unbreakable record in F1, but we've seen streaks of 6 or 7 or 5 or 4 in a row. So I wouldn't even rule out possibly a team tying that record one day or even winning 9 in a row. But hey, you know, I mean, to be fair, we all knew Mercedes' streak was going to come to an end at some point. But wow. They just looked very flat all year. Like, I knew Mercedes had a lot of issues. But wow, I did not think the streak would end like that. I thought they would have at least put up more of a fight than what they did this season. Like, Jesus Christ. So yeah, the drama in the team, it has officially cost them a 9th straight Constructors title. Like, let me ask you something. Days of our Mercedes. Does that sound like a healthy organization to you? Probably not. And with Hamilton potentially staying around for 5 more years, I could see this getting more out of control. So this means the last 4 races for Mercedes are just test and tune-up session and just to try and maybe hope to get the second in the Constructors' title ahead of Ferrari. Whether they can or not, that's yet to be seen. It all depends on if Ferrari shoots themselves in the foot or not. Again. But yeah. And for everyone complaining about the championship being locked up early, let me just say this. I'm still going to watch the last 4 races anyway. Regardless of if there's a championship on the line or not. I'm still going to enjoy it because I'm a real racing fan and not a fake entertainment fan like a majority of NASCAR fans. But all I got to say is this. If you have a problem with the championship being locked up early, all I have to say is, well, everybody had all season to not put themselves in this position. And they failed to take advantage of it. That's why it's called a season-long points format for a reason. And why every point matters. And every race matters. But before we wrap things up here in the land of the rising sun, while everyone else takes out their Metro cards and hits the L train tonight, for Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc, their rides home will be short-lived. Because they've arrived at Elimination Station. And for that, they go somewhere different. Because for their failures of having a solid season, their failures to get enough wins to compete for the championship this year, their failures to be consistent enough to compete for the title this year, their failures to show up and perform when it mattered the most at key points in the season, and their hopes and dreams of winning the World Drivers' Championship this year. Consider their names written down in the death note, as their seasons and their hopes and dreams have been absolutely deleted. But hold up, we ain't there yet, because while Mercedes has also arrived at Elimination Station. And for that, they're going to the same place that Perez and Leclerc went to. Because for their failures of having a solid season, their failures to get enough wins to compete for the Constructors' title this year, their failures to be consistent in the Constructors' Championship this year, their failures to show up and perform at key moments of the season when it mattered the most this year, and their hopes and dreams of winning a 9th consecutive Constructors' Championship this year. Consider their names written down in the Death Note too, as their season and their hopes and dreams of a 9th straight title have been absolutely deleted!
There's only one thing left to do. Gotta write their names in the Death Note. Delete!
Delete. 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 Delete.
Delete it!
You will rest in peace.